The tavern, the birthplace of countless adventures. It's the classic starting point for a many Dungeons & Dragons campaigns. Picture it, a roaring fire, mugs of ale, mysterious strangers in the dark corners. It's where heroes meet, plans are hatched, and legends begin. But what if I told you there's a whole world of possibilities beyond those cozy tavern walls? What if your next campaign started somewhere totally unexpected? Somewhere that could set the tone for an epic journey and forge the bond between your players like never before. Whether it's escaping a prison, surviving a shipwreck, or being thrust into action in the middle of a festival, where you start your campaign can completely change the vibe and create unforgettable memories with your players. I'm Sire from Tabletop Mayhem, and if you enjoy these D&D and other TTRPG tips, tricks, and story building advice, please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. In today's videos, we are going to explore some alternatives to the classic tavern start. Ways to kick off a campaign that can be just as fun and set the stage for an epic adventure straight from the get-go. So grab your dice and let's dive in. Don't get me wrong, I really do enjoy a classic D&D tavern. There's nothing wrong with it. These are just alternative starts to a campaign that can just completely change the entire vibe of a campaign. So without further ado, number 1, a prison break. Players begin in a dungeon or a castle where they need to escape together. This instantly builds camaraderie and a sense of urgency. The pros of a prison break: it instantly bonds the party together through shared experiences, trauma, the need of survival, and once they escape, they're an official party. A party of criminals, well, at least in this town. It's easy for them to bond because they initially have no one else that they can trust or rely on. Prisons can be mini dungeons, and starting your very first session off with a mini dungeon with locked doors, magically booby-trapped corridors, maybe hunting hounds, and of course encounters with guards can be incredibly fun, intense, and very exciting. The cons: this is hard to pull off as the only reason why this group of people should stay together and form a party. There needs to be another reason that this party sticks together, and that needs to be established pretty early on. I do like to add an NPC into the mix in prison breaks because it allows players to gain other information to set goals. Once the players escape jail, they're going to be fugitives. They are going to be trying to hide out in the city or trying to escape, and the NPC can give them those opportunities. Perhaps he has an uncle who is the captain of a vessel that's waiting for him that can whisk them off to safety, or perhaps he has a friend who's a tavern owner and he's about to make a shipment of ale, but he can leave some of those barrels empty for the players to climb into. This also now allows there to be a debt that needs to be repaid that can be very useful in keeping a group of people together. There's a lot of dominoes that need to be lined up just right to make this not feel forced. The second idea: the festival or the event disaster. You want to start in the middle of a lively festival, a market day, or a royal celebration where something unexpected happens, like a sudden attack, a magical phenomenon, or a mysterious invitation. This is always going to be epic and crazy if it's done right. If it's a sudden attack, your players will immediately be thrown into a fight, into fighting for their lives, fighting for other people's lives, fighting to keep defenseless people safe. In this situation, you need to be very careful what you choose to throw at your players, especially if it's a magical phenomenon. It would be cool to have half the population suddenly disappear or turn into bubbles that dissipate, but ultimately, what are the players supposed to do about that? It would probably be better if a bunch of people just burst from their skin sack and became monsters that attacked other people. Now there's something the players can do about that. The pros of using this to start your campaign is that your players are immediately seen as heroes, and the town's higher ups, the mayors or the lords and ladies, will probably want to thank them for their valiant effort and their brave deeds, and they'll most likely want to hire them, become their patrons for further investigation into the matter or into other matters. But establishing your party as a group of heroes so early on in the campaign will really aid in keeping them together and wanting to hold on to that title. The con: This can be an incredibly slow start for your campaign, mostly because anytime you start a campaign with a festival, with a celebration, with anything super fun and kind of different and playful, especially because the players find themselves in a brand new world as well that they want to explore, the players are going to one by one explore. They're going to want to do things. And in a festival setting, they're probably going to do silly things. They're probably going to want to, I don't know, get their face painted. Someone's gonna wanna watch the magician on stage. Someone's gonna enter into a pickle eating contest. They're gonna do silly, fun things. It's completely expected and normal. So the issue is that when they are doing these things, everybody else is kind of waiting around doing nothing. So you kind of have to find the balance of letting them explore, do fun things, as well as getting to the main event of session one. So it's definitely you know, finding a balance that works for you. Number 3, the funeral. Players are all connected to the recently deceased, and as they gather, something happens. Now this does sound simple enough, but I want to give you 2 examples of how to make this really enticing to your players. One, maybe this is more like an Irish wake and people are getting a little too toasted, and maybe the brothers of the recently deceased get in a little bit of a brotherly brawl and accidentally knock over the coffin. It falls to the ground, the lid pops off, and there's nobody inside. What is inside is a letter addressed to the players. Or maybe halfway through a funeral, a big explosion blowing out the windows happens, and a really creepy necromancing looking guy comes in with a bunch of his little ghoulish minions, and he takes the body and leaves, leaving the ghouls there to kill off any witnesses. Thus the party has their first encounter. But upon exploring, after the ghouls are dealt with, they see a map etched into the lid of the coffin, and the widow now asks them to investigate what's going on. The key is that the party has to know and be extremely emotionally invested in the recently deceased to want to investigate. This will pull a party together, and it's also a really crazy way to start a campaign. The pros, the party is immediately formed and they already are set off on their very first adventure. They get to bond and get to know each other while they're investigating. The con, this can easily falter if the relationship that the player has picked is not a deep enough bond. They really have to establish a deep enough tie that they absolutely need to figure out what's happened to this beloved person. The next is the ever so classic, I'm going to say classic over cliche here, caravan ambush or shipwreck. It's basically stranding your party in an area where they have to rely on each other to survive. Now, I will say that I started one of my own campaigns with a shipwreck, but I did it in a very interesting way. My players were on the very last vessel fleeing their disease-ridden city. A darkness was taking over and it was killing off like biomatter, so all of the trees, the vegetation, the food. Their boat was the last made of the remaining wood, the remaining trees that they had, and they were the last hope for their people. But in the middle of the ocean, while they're trying to seek out new land because they have been isolated for centuries, they really were the last hope for their people. It was the middle of the night, they hit something, and the entire back of their ship goes up and they slam down, but instead of slamming down into water, they slam down into solid matter. They are now halfway sunk into sand, and they look out and they can hear this rumbling, and what they are hearing is giants running towards them across this sandy mound, and these giants are menacing. And as they approach the ship suddenly just sinks below their feet, and they are back into water, and their ship's broken and it's beginning to just sink. But now there are giants aboard their ship, and now they're fighting giants on a sinking ship. It is just pandemonium. And then again, the entire world shifts again, and now they're halfway embedded in sand. Even the sand giants are halfway embedded. Some of them are embedded, some of them are running around whacking people, and they're trying to dig each other out. They have no idea what's going on. The world shifts again, they're back into the ocean. This is just absolutely a devastating situation that they have no idea what's going on. So I think that this is a mixture of just maybe a chaotic event, what the hell is happening here, and a shipwreck. I like blending these together. So don't feel like you have to just pick one and just stick to it. This was an incredibly epic way to start a campaign. Pros of starting campaigns like this: survival really does bring people together, especially when coming together is practical and the only thing keeping them alive. The con: even though this is an easy way to form a party, this is a bad way to keep a party together, because once survival is off the table, once they find civilization, once they find a means home, they no longer are going to stay together. So this does require a lot of extra steps to kind of establish a means of why they should stick together. So either establishing a really early bad guy, a common bad guy, or what I do is the series of unfortunate events. We just pile on just horrific things onto our players. So maybe the shipwreck was in a unknown area. They don't know where they are. It turns out that they're not supposed to be there. They're outsiders. They are arrested and thrown into a dungeon, or they're going to be sacrificed to some sort of like deity, or they are now enslaved and now have to like fight for their lives in a gladiator pit. You know, you have to set them up in a means of a different kind of survival in a way. So this does require a lot of extra steps and an extra planning on your part. The fifth way to start a campaign is super fun and very chaotic. I call it, oh my god, what the f is happening? You start the players off immediately, right smack dab in the middle of something chaotic that's happening. A heist, a burglary, a fight, a battle, just something crazy. And they start immediately right in the middle. And they have to figure out what's going on, where are they, and then they have to figure out ways of surviving, all within seconds of starting this campaign. This is extremely chaotic and very confusing for your players. And it's very interesting because they are forced to just suddenly work together and figure out what the heck is going on, who's the bad guy, what's happening, and work together to overcome or survive the situation. Now, this can be done in several different ways. If we're going to do something like a heist, or if we're going to do something like, I don't know, like a small skirmish or a battle, you would want to connect your players through employment. So you'd want to have your players choose a reason as to why they are a foot soldier, or choose the reason why they are a guard. And starting everybody off as town guard is actually a really fun way to start a campaign, because they're kind of already in a hero-ish setting, and they kind of already are kind of a party. Even if they don't know each other or get along, they're gonna soon. The pros of this is that this is an easy transition from employment, from duty, to forming a party, because they're already connected through, you know, their work as guards or as soldiers. And because they already have that connection, that brotherhood, that sisterhood, even if they don't know each other well, the fact that they all fight or work for the same source will really help bond them together. And they already have experience in fighting, in surviving, in overcoming things. So them transitioning to doing group missions can slowly transition them into becoming a party that will eventually get sent off to do other things. This is a really solid way to form a party with, you know, overstepping all the awkward, having to figure out why we're coming together, why we're friends, why we're working together. Don't knock this one. The cons: you are inevitably going to get that one player who's going to throw a wrench into your plans. They're either going to pick a species that does not make sense for this, that is just unusual, or they're going to pick something that wouldn't be here, or they just don't want this for their backstory. And even though you can set those rules, those dynamics, I want everybody to be connected through employment, you're always going to get that one player who just doesn't want to do that. So the one thing that you can do to incorporate them, to introduce them, is to have them be introduced to the party in the same manner. So let's say if it's a battle, perhaps this player was sent here to deliver something by their employer, and they get caught up in this and they kind of get whisked into all of this. Or if it's like a robbery or a heist, perhaps they're a patron there, perhaps they're at the bank and they're trying to deposit their money or take money out, or, you know, maybe it was, you know, their employer's goods that were taken. So it's a way of still connecting and establishing them. I really try not to force people to play things that they don't want to play. It's very much a negotiation of give and take, but ultimately we have to find common ground and be flexible. So if you like this kind of idea of an instant party, even if they don't know each other well, even if they don't even like each other, they'll learn to love each other. But the next idea I have is maybe starting your players off a lot younger, where they are actually students and apprentices. This can work out really well because you have an authoritative figure over them that are going to force them to stay together and to do things such as going out on adventures and doing tasks that need to be done. The pros of this is that this is a very easy way to form a party, and honestly they'll bond very quickly because nothing will bring people closer together faster than these silly little things they're going to be doing as adolescents. And I like the idea of pairing this with kind of either a jump in time or they're graduating and trying to get into a guild that they needed to be handpicked from their class, and it just happens to be this particular party was picked to be a part of this guild. So they're still young adventurers, they're still young, but you know, you have a kind of a transition from being in school to being a part of this guild that they really desperately, you know, wanted to be a part of. And because of something they've done in their school, in their, you know, in their tasks as students, they were handpicked to be part of this guild. It's a great way to form a party very quickly. So the con, your players have to have a shared goal. Not only a shared goal, but a shared future goal. So they all have to want the same thing. I did use the example of the guild, that all of these students might be attending this college because this is the college where this really famous guild handpicks their guild members. And it's a really big deal, and perhaps their group effort of some heroic task got them to all be picked together, and they stay together when they enter this guild, and then they continue adventuring. That's solid. That's a solid way to form a party. The issue is that if they don't have that shared goal, if they don't want that, then this isn't gonna work. It just won't. Last but not least is the magical summoning. The characters start the campaign being summoned, being whisked away by some sort of powerful deity or magic caster or a very mysterious artifact. The players don't even have to know each other, which really aids in the element of surprise and mystery. The idea of a god or a powerful entity calling upon you specifically to do something for them is really hard to say no to. So I actually like to start campaigns like this out in a very different way. What I like to do is start players out individually doing very short sessions, 20 or 30 minute long sessions where they're kind of just beginning their adventure, and they will be right in the middle of something when they get summoned, when they get teleported, and that's where their adventure will end. I do it for each player, and then what will happen is that they're brought all together and that they will suddenly be aware at the same time, standing together in front of whatever has summoned them. The reason I do it like this is because it's so different, it's so odd, it's kind of unsettling and confusing, and this is really the vibe I want to set for a campaign like this. The pros: this allows for a bunch of different backgrounds, races, classes that would not normally form a party together to form a party, maybe against their wills, but who can deny the gods? The cons would be dealing with a competitive player. You're going to get that one player who does not like to be told what to do, who does not like to be forced into a situation. I think that when you are going to start a campaign this way, you really have to vet the players and vet what the players are going to be comfortable doing and what they're not going to be comfortable doing. A lot of this is going to rely on how willing your players are to open themselves up to a different kind of adventure. So there you have it, a whole world of possibilities beyond the tavern walls. Whether you're throwing your players into a chaotic festival, stranding them on a desert island, or throwing them into a dungeon, starting your campaigns in unexpected ways can really set the tone for an epic adventure. These alternate beginnings are more than just shaking it up. They're about creating instant immersion, bonding your players through shared experiences, and laying the groundwork for the story that you want to tell. Remember, the way that you start your campaigns can have a huge impact on how your story unfolds. So don't be afraid to experiment. Try out new things. See what excites you and your players. Thanks so much for watching. And hey, if you found these tips useful, please hit the thumbs up. And please share your ideas. What is the coolest way that you started a campaign? I can't wait to read them in the comments. Again, thank you for watching and happy adventuring.